In the shadow of Jupiter's largest mining colony, 13-year-old Nova Blackwood sat cross-legged in her favorite spot, a forgotten maintenance tunnel that offered a perfect view of the stars through a reinforced viewport. Her fingers danced across her custom-built tablet, lines of code flowing like poetry as she worked on her latest project, a security system upgrade for the colony's aging infrastructure. Nova wasn't like other teenagers in New Horizon Colony. While they spent their free time in virtual reality pods or attending zero-gravity sports matches, she found solace in the elegant simplicity of computer systems. Her father, the colony's chief engineer, had always encouraged her passion, even when it led to occasional improvements to colony systems that the administration hadn't exactly authorized. The tablet's screen cast a soft blue glow across her dark skin and curly hair as she worked, completely unaware that she was being watched. High above the colony, cloaked in technology far beyond human understanding, the Vraxian ship Shadow Weaver hung in silent observation. Its commander, Zixtal, studied the girl through advanced surveillance systems with growing interest. "This is the one?" Zixtal's second-in-command, Nex, asked skeptically. Their crystalline form shifted colors slightly, indicating doubt. "She appears unremarkable." Zixtal's outer membrane rippled with amusement. "That's precisely why she's perfect. Our intelligence suggests she's responsible for creating the adaptive security protocols that have kept our best hackers out of New Horizon systems for months. A child, Nex, a human child, has outmaneuvered our most sophisticated cyber warfare units. And you believe capturing her will give us access to the colony's defense grid? Better." Zixtal's form pulsed with dark satisfaction. "She'll be our key to cracking every human settlement in this sector. They'll never suspect we're using one of their own children's genius against them." Nova felt a slight shiver run down her spine, as if someone had walked over her grave. She glanced up at the stars, seeing nothing but the familiar constellations she'd grown up with. Still, something felt off. She saved her work and began packing up her equipment, deciding it was time to head home. The maintenance tunnel's dim emergency lighting cast long shadows as she made her way back toward the main corridor. Her footsteps echoed slightly on the metal grating, a sound she'd heard thousands of times before. But tonight, it seemed different, as if there were other, softer footsteps mixing with her own. She quickened her pace, her heart beginning to race. The colony's security systems were good. She'd helped design them herself. But she'd also learned that no system was perfect. There were always vulnerabilities, always weak points that could be exploited if you knew where to look. Nova reached for her tablet, ready to access the security feeds, when the air around her suddenly shimmered. The temperature dropped several degrees, and a strange metallic taste filled her mouth. Before she could scream, before she could even move, reality seemed to fold in on itself. When her vision cleared, she found herself in a chamber that defied human architecture. The walls seemed to breathe, shifting with patterns of light that made her eyes hurt if she looked at them too long. The air itself felt wrong, slightly too thick, carrying scents her brain couldn't quite process. "Welcome aboard the Shadow Weaver, Nova Blackwood." The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, resonating in her bones. A figure emerged from what she had thought was a solid wall, a being composed of semi-transparent crystals and shifting energy fields. Nova backed away, her tablet clutched to her chest like a shield. Her mind raced, processing the situation with the same methodical approach she used for debugging complex code. Alien ship. Advanced technology. They knew her name. This wasn't random. "Your reputation precedes you," Zixtal continued, watching her reactions carefully. "Few humans have ever managed to create security systems capable of resisting Vraxian cyber warfare techniques. Fewer still have done so before reaching biological maturity. You've been trying to hack our colony." Nova's voice was steady, despite her fear. "The attacks last month, the ones everyone thought were just system glitches. That was you." Zixtal's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been approval. Correct. Your adaptable protocols proved problematic for our plans. But now, you'll help us perfect our approach. Your understanding of human systems, combined with our technology, will make every human settlement in this sector vulnerable. Nova's fingers tightened around her tablet. They hadn't taken it from her, probably assuming it was nothing more than a child's toy. They didn't understand that in her hands, even the simplest computer could become something more. And if I refuse? Refuse. Zixtal seemed genuinely amused. My dear child, you don't seem to grasp your situation. This isn't a negotiation. You're not a guest. You're a tool, one we'll use with or without your cooperation. The alien gestured, and part of the wall dissolved, revealing a chamber filled with complex machinery. At its center was what looked like a neural interface chair, but twisted, wrong, clearly designed to extract information rather than facilitate willing connection. The process will be significantly less uncomfortable if you cooperate, Zixtal added, almost kindly. Your mind is remarkable. It would be a shame to damage it unnecessarily. Nova took a deep breath, her mind already racing ahead, analyzing possibilities, looking for exploits like she would in a complex system. They had made 3 critical mistakes. First, they had underestimated her, seeing only a child. Second, they had left her with her tablet, her own custom-built system that she knew inside and out. And third, they had just revealed exactly how valuable they thought she was. You're right, she said quietly, letting her shoulders slump in apparent defeat. I'll cooperate, but can I at least send a message to my father? Let him know I'm okay. He'll worry otherwise. Zixtal's form rippled with what might have been laughter. You humans and your emotional attachments. No messages, no communications. You're going to disappear, Nova Blackwood. And by the time anyone realizes you're gone, it will be far too late. Nova nodded, fighting to keep her expression fearful and resigned while her fingers discreetly began typing on her tablet screen. They thought they were getting a scared child who would help them destroy everything she loved. Instead, they had just given one of the best young hackers in the solar system direct access to their ship's systems. The game was on, and Nova was playing to win. Nova sat in her containment cell aboard the Shadow Weaver, appearing to all observers as a defeated child. But beneath her carefully crafted expression of resignation, her mind worked furiously. Her fingers moved across her tablet's screen with practiced precision, each touch a potential key to her freedom. The Vraxians had made their first major mistake by assuming her tablet was harmless. Their second was connecting it to their network for monitoring purposes, unknowingly giving her a direct line into their systems. Now, as she pretended to play simple games, she was actually mapping their entire network architecture. Fascinating. A voice hummed from the doorway. Nova looked up to see Renlo, the ship's chief scientist, his crystalline form refracting the dim light of her cell. Even in captivity, you continue to exhibit remarkable focus. Nova shrugged, the picture of teenage indifference. Not much else to do in here. Renlo moved closer, his form shifting colors in what she had learned was their equivalent of curiosity. Tomorrow, we begin the extraction process. Your knowledge of human security systems will serve a greater purpose. Can I ask you something? Nova kept her voice small, childlike. Why do you need me? Your technology is so much more advanced than ours. The scientist's form rippled with what might have been pride. Exactly the reaction she'd been hoping for. Advanced, yes, but human systems have proven unpredictable. Your species' tendency toward chaos makes your security protocols maddeningly irregular. We require insider knowledge to properly exploit them. As Renlo spoke, Nova's fingers continued their subtle dance across her screen. His presence was actually helpful. His higher security clearance provided access to deeper system levels she hadn't been able to reach before. Commander Zixtal believes your juvenile mind will be easier to extract information from, Renlo continued, though I suspect you're more complex than they realize. Nova allowed herself a small smile. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just a scared kid who misses home. After Ranello left, Nova's expression hardened with determination. She had discovered something interesting. The Vraxian ship's systems were incredibly advanced, but they followed strict logical patterns. Their weakness was their inability to handle chaos, to adapt to the unexpected. It was why they struggled with human security systems, and it was going to be their downfall. She began writing a program that would introduce random variations into the ship's essential systems, nothing big enough to trigger immediate alarms, but enough to create confusion. Environmental controls would fluctuate randomly. Internal sensors would report phantom readings. Communication systems would experience momentary delays. Hours passed as she worked, carefully layering her code into the ship's systems like a digital virus. She named it Chaos Protocol, a tribute to the very human unpredictability the Vraxians found so troublesome. A soft chime indicated midnight by ship's time. In 6 hours, they planned to begin their extraction process. Nova took a deep breath and activated her program. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, reports began flooding the ship's communication channels. Temperature fluctuations in the engine room, gravity inconsistencies in the crew quarters, random power surges in non-critical systems. Through her tablet, Nova watched the crew's increasing confusion with grim satisfaction. The Vraxians, with their logical, ordered minds, were struggling to find patterns where there were none. Their attempts to correct each issue only triggered new variations in her program. "Something is wrong," she heard Zixtel's voice echo through the corridors. "Run a full diagnostic on all systems." But each diagnostic came back clean, because there was nothing actually wrong with their systems. They were just behaving, unpredictably, like humans. Nova's next step was more dangerous. While the crew was distracted by the chaos she created, she began accessing their secure databases. What she found made her blood run cold. The Vraxians weren't just planning to hack human colonies. They were preparing for a full-scale invasion. Her colony, New Horizon, was just the first target. She had to warn them somehow. But direct communication was impossible. The Vraxians monitored all outgoing signals. Then she remembered something her father had taught her about binary stars. They dance around each other in predictable patterns, unless something disrupts their gravitational field. The Shadow Weaver's engines operated on a similar principle, using gravitational fields for propulsion. If she could modify her chaos protocol to affect those fields in specific ways, she could create a pattern that any attentive human observatory would recognize as artificial, a warning signal hidden in gravitational fluctuations. As she worked on this new addition to her program, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. She had pushed too far, too fast. The Vraxians had finally realized something was deliberately interfering with their systems. The human child. Zixtal's voice roared through the ship's communications. "Lock down her cell. Disable all electronic devices." Nova's fingers flew across her tablet's screen, racing to complete her modifications before they could stop her. She heard the heavy footsteps of guards approaching her cell. The door's locking mechanism began to engage. With seconds to spare, she activated the final sequence. The ship's engines hiccuped, creating a distinctive pattern of gravitational waves that would propagate through space. Then her tablet went dark as the cell's power was cut. The door slid open, revealing Zixtel's imposing form, now pulsing with angry red energy. "What have you done?" they demanded. Nova looked up, meeting their gaze steadily. "Created chaos," she replied simply. "It's what humans do best." As guards moved to restrain her, she caught a glimpse through her cell's window of the gas giant they were orbiting. Somewhere out there, she hoped, someone would notice the strange gravitational fluctuations. Someone would realize they weren't natural. Someone would understand. But for now, she had a new problem to solve. The extraction process would begin soon, and she needed to find a way to protect the knowledge in her mind. Her tablet might be gone, but her most powerful weapon, her ability to think in ways the Vraxians couldn't predict, was still very much active. The game wasn't over. It was just entering a new level. The extraction chamber was a nightmare of twisted metal and pulsing energy fields. Nova stood before it, her hands bound by energy cuffs that tingled uncomfortably against her skin. Her tablet was gone, but her mind remained sharp, analyzing every detail of her surroundings with practiced precision. "The process will begin shortly," Renlo announced, his crystalline form moving around the chamber with fluid grace as he adjusted various controls. But Nova noticed something odd about his movements, a slight hesitation, a subtle disruption in his usually smooth patterns. Commander Zixtal stood watching, their forms still flickering with anger from Nova's earlier digital assault on their systems. "Proceed with the extraction. We've wasted enough time with this child's games." As Renlo guided Nova toward the central chair, she felt him slip something into her hand. Small, smooth, metallic. Her fingers closed around it instinctively, careful not to draw attention to the exchange. "The neural interface must be calibrated precisely," Renlo said, his voice carrying an unusual emphasis. "Commander, your presence may interfere with the sensitive equipment. Perhaps you should observe from the control room." Zixtal's form pulsed with annoyance, but they moved toward the door. "Very well. But proceed quickly. The longer we delay, the more chance her little signal has of being detected." Once Zixtal had left, Renlo's demeanor changed dramatically. He moved closer to Nova, speaking in barely a whisper. "Listen carefully. What I've given you is a quantum key. It can disable the neural dampeners in the extraction system, but you must time its use perfectly." Nova studied him carefully, not daring to hope. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you've proven something I've long suspected," Renlo replied, his crystalline form shifting to deep blues and purples. "Our obsession with order, with control, it's making us stagnant. Your chaos protocol demonstrated more innovation than I've seen from our scientists in decades." He continued preparing the equipment, maintaining the appearance of following procedure while he spoke. "There are others like me among the crew, those who question the Vraxian Council's aggressive expansion policies. Your presence here has become a catalyst for potential change." Nova's mind raced with new possibilities. "The system disruptions I caused created more than just confusion," Renlo finished. "They exposed fractures in our society that many have been too afraid to acknowledge. But we must act carefully. Zixtal still has many loyal followers." He guided her into the extraction chair, carefully positioning restraints that Nova noticed were slightly looser than they should have been. "When the extraction begins, you'll feel pressure in your mind. That's when you must use the quantum key. It will create a feedback loop in the system. Won't that hurt you?" Nova asked, genuine concern in her voice despite her situation. Renlo's form rippled with what might have been appreciation. "Your empathy, even for your captors, proves I've chosen correctly. Don't worry about me. Focus on survival." The extraction chamber's doors slid open as other Vraxian scientists entered, followed by Zixtal returning to observe from a safe distance. Nova clutched the quantum key tightly, her heart pounding but her mind clear. The extraction process began. Nova felt the pressure Renlo had warned about, like fingers trying to pry open her thoughts. She waited, counting seconds, looking for the perfect moment. The machine's hum increased in pitch, and she saw Renlo give an almost imperceptible nod. She activated the quantum key. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The extraction field collapsed in on itself, creating a cascade of energy that surged through the ship's systems. Alarms blared as power fluctuations rippled through every deck. "What's happening?" Zixtal demanded, their form flashing with dangerous patterns. Renlo moved swiftly, his actions disguised by the chaos. "The human's mind. It's creating some kind of cognitive feedback loop. The systems can't handle the neural interference." Nova felt her restraints release and slipped from the chair as the room erupted into frantic activity. Through the confusion, she saw other Vraxians moving with surprising coordination. Renlo's allies, she realized, using the chaos as cover for their own rebellion. The prisoner is escaping. Someone shouted, but the warning was lost in the growing pandemonium. Nova caught glimpses of Vraxian crew members turning against each other, long-hidden divisions finally breaking into open conflict. Renlo appeared at her side, guiding her toward a hidden access corridor. My associates have disabled key security systems, but we must move quickly. Zixtal will soon realize this is more than a technical malfunction. As they moved through the ship's less-traveled passages, Nova saw evidence of spreading rebellion. Some crew members fought against security forces, while others barricaded themselves in various sections, declaring their opposition to the invasion plans. "Your chaos did more than disrupt our systems," Renlo explained as they hurried along. "It showed us that change is possible, that rigid order isn't the only path. But now we must get you to safety before Zixtal can regain control." Nova followed closely, her mind already working on their next move. She had started this revolution with code, with carefully crafted chaos. Now she needed to help ensure it succeeded, not just for her own survival, but for everyone who had risked everything to help her. The ship shuddered around them as battles raged between factions. Through it all, Nova couldn't help but appreciate the irony. She had been brought aboard to help the Vraxians understand human systems, but instead, she had helped them understand something far more important about themselves. The game had changed completely now. It was no longer just about escape, it was about revolution. And Nova was right in the middle of it all, ready to help write the next chapter in both human and Vraxian history. The Shadow Weaver had become a battlefield. Nova and Renlo navigated through corridors filled with clashing energy fields as Vraxian fought Vraxian. The ship's internal lighting flickered erratically, casting strange shadows that made the crystalline forms of the crew members appear even more alien and unsettling. "We need to reach the primary control hub," Renlo said as they ducked into a maintenance shaft to avoid a group of security forces. "From there, we can lock down key systems and prevent Zixtal from calling for reinforcements." Nova nodded, her mind already mapping potential routes based on what she remembered of the ship's layout. "But won't that be the first place they'll look for us?" "Indeed." Renlo's form shifted to a deep, thoughtful purple, "which is why we're going to use your specialty, chaos, to our advantage." They moved carefully through the ship's service corridors, accompanied by two of Renlo's most trusted allies. Vexna, a weapons specialist whose form sparkled with aggressive red energy, and Tylepor, a navigation expert who moved with liquid grace through the shadows. Nova noticed how the rebellion had split the crew almost perfectly along philosophical lines. Those who embraced change and questioned the rigid Vraxian hierarchy fought alongside Renlo, while those who clung to the old ways remained loyal to Zixtal. As they approached the control hub, Nova's ears caught a familiar hum, the sound of the ship's communication array powering up. "They're trying to send a distress signal," she realized aloud. "If reinforcements arrive, all is lost." Vexna's voice crackled with urgency. "The rebellion will be crushed, and your colony will face immediate invasion." Nova's mind raced. Without her tablet, she couldn't directly interface with the ship's systems, but maybe she didn't need to. "Renlo, you said Vraxian technology is based on crystalline matrices, right? Like your physical forms." "Correct. Our technology is essentially an extension of our biology." "Then it should be vulnerable to the same kind of resonance disruption that affects your forms." Nova's eyes lit up with inspiration. "When I was studying your systems earlier, I noticed that certain frequency patterns caused instability in the crystal structures." Telpor's form rippled with understanding. "The harmonic generators in engineering. If we could modify them to emit the right frequency, we could disrupt their ability to maintain stable energy fields." Renlo finished, his form brightening with approval. "But such a disruption would affect all Vraxians aboard, including us." "Not if we can shield ourselves," Nova countered. "The quantum key you gave me. It's designed to interrupt energy patterns. Could it be modified to protect against the resonance?" Before Renlo could respond, a massive explosion rocked the ship. Through a nearby viewport, Nova saw escape pods launching into space, crew members fleeing the growing conflict. Zixtal is getting desperate, Vexna observed. They're losing control. The group finally reached engineering, but found the entrance heavily guarded by security forces loyal to Zixtal. As they took cover behind a bulkhead, Nova studied the guards' movements, noting how their crystalline forms pulsed in sync with the ship's power systems. "I have an idea," she whispered to her allies. "But it's risky, and I'll need all of you to trust me completely." Renlo's form shifted to a warm, supportive blue. "You've earned that trust, Nova Blackwood." Nova quickly outlined her plan. Using the quantum key as a base, they would create a localized resonance pulse that would temporarily destabilize the guards' forms. The trick would be maintaining the precise frequency needed to affect them without harming Nova's allies. Vexna moved into position, her weapon systems calibrated to enhance the resonance effect. Tylepor began making subtle adjustments to nearby power conduits, preparing to channel energy where they needed it. Renlo worked with Nova to modify the quantum key, his expertise with Vraxian technology, complementing her intuitive understanding of systems. Just as they were ready to initiate their plan, a cold voice rang out through the ship's communication system. "Attention all crew." Zixtal's words dripped with barely contained rage. "The human child has corrupted some of you with her chaos, turned you against your own kind. This ends now." The ship's artificial gravity suddenly increased, making movement difficult. Emergency bulkheads began slamming shut throughout the vessel. "They're trying to trap us in sections," Tylepor warned. "Standard containment protocol." "Now or never," Nova said, activating the modified quantum key. The effect was immediate and stunning. A wave of energy pulsed through the corridor, causing the security forces to stagger as their crystalline forms began to vibrate at clashing frequencies. Renlo and his allies, protected by Nova's modifications, moved swiftly to subdue them. They rushed into engineering, where Nova's eyes immediately fixed on the harmonic generation system, a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with energy at the heart of the ship. She ran to the controls, her fingers flying over the alien interface as she applied everything she learned about Vraxian technology. "Stop." Zixtal's voice boomed as they materialized in the doorway, their form blazing with furious energy. "You understand nothing of what you're doing, child. Order must be maintained. Chaos must be contained." Nova didn't look up from her work, even as she felt the commander's energy field pressing against her, trying to force her away from the controls. "You're wrong," she said firmly. "Chaos isn't your enemy. Change isn't your enemy. Your fear of both is what's destroying you." With a final command, she activated the modified harmonic generator. The ship filled with a deep, resonating hum as waves of energy began pulsing through every deck. All around them, Vraxian forms began to flicker and shift, their carefully maintained order disrupted by frequencies that forced change at the molecular level. Zixtal's form wavered, their usual precise patterns dissolving into swirling chaos. What have you done?" Nova watched as the ship's rigid hierarchy literally destabilized before her eyes. "I showed them that chaos can be beautiful," she answered quietly. "That change can make you stronger." The breaking point had arrived, and with it, the chance for something new to emerge from the fragments of the old. The only question was, what would the Vraxians choose to become? In the aftermath of Nova's harmonic pulse, the Shadow Weaver hung silent in space, its crystalline corridors still humming with residual energy. The ship's interior had been transformed, not destroyed, but fundamentally changed. Where once there were rigid, geometric patterns, now organic, flowing forms emerged from the walls and ceiling, as if the vessel itself had awakened to new possibilities. Nova stood in engineering, watching as Vraxian crew members slowly recovered, their forms stabilizing into new configurations. Some maintained their original crystalline structure, while others had transformed into more fluid, adaptable states. But most fascinating was how they now shifted freely between these states, no longer bound by rigid patterns. Zixtal lay collapsed near the harmonic generator, their once imposing form now reduced to its basic elements. As Nova approached, accompanied by Renlo, the former commander's form gradually reconstituted itself, but differently. The harsh, angular edges had softened, and swirls of color moved through their crystalline body in unpredictable patterns. "I understand now." Zixtol's voice was changed too, carrying harmonics it never had before. "All this time, we thought chaos was our enemy. We never realized it was the key to our evolution." Renlo moved forward, his own form flowing smoothly between states. "The rigid hierarchy we maintained wasn't protecting our society. It was stifling it. This child showed us that adaptation, change, even uncertainty, these are not weaknesses to be feared, but opportunities to be embraced." Nova watched as more crew members entered engineering, their forms now expressing their individuality in ways that would have been forbidden hours earlier. The rebellion had succeeded, but not through violence or destruction. Instead, it had succeeded by forcing the Vraxians to confront their own potential for change. "Your colony was never in real danger," Zixtol admitted, addressing Nova directly. "We couldn't even breach your basic security systems. Our failure to adapt, to think creatively as humans do, made us ineffective invaders. Perhaps that's not such a bad thing." A signal chimed from the communication array. Nova's heart leaped. It was from New Horizon Colony. Her gravitational wave message had been received, and a rescue fleet was approaching. But now, she realized, they weren't coming to save her from enemies. They were arriving to meet potential allies. "What will you do now?" she asked the assembled Vraxians. "Your society, your entire way of life, has changed." Renlo's form shifted to a warm, optimistic gold. "We will learn, grow, explore who we can become without the constraints of rigid order. But first, we should establish peaceful contact with your people. Perhaps humans and Vraxians can learn from each other." Over the next few hours, Nova helped facilitate the first official communication between New Horizon Colony and the transformed Vraxian crew. She watched with pride as her father's face appeared on the main screen, first showing concern for her safety, then amazement as she explained what had happened. The story spread quickly throughout human space, how a 13-year-old girl had not only escaped alien captors, but had helped transform an entire species. But for Nova, the most important changes were more personal. As she prepared to return home, Renlo presented her with a gift. A new tablet, created using a hybrid of human and Vraxian technology. "A symbol of what we can achieve together," he explained. "Neither purely ordered nor purely chaotic, but a beautiful balance of both." The device hummed with potential in her hands, its crystal matrix responding to her touch in ways her old tablet never could. It represented everything she had learned aboard the Shadow Weaver. That true strength comes not from imposing order or embracing chaos, but from finding harmony between the two. Standing in the colony's observation deck weeks later, Nova watched as the Shadow Weaver departed for Vraxian space. The ship's formerly invisible cloaking field now rippled with visible waves of energy, a proud display of its new nature. It would return soon, carrying diplomats and scientists eager to establish formal relations between their peoples. Her father stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "You know, Nova," he said thoughtfully, "when I encouraged your interest in programming, I never imagined it would lead to first contact and galactic peace." Nova smiled, her fingers running over the smooth surface of her new tablet. "Sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places," she replied. "The Vraxians taught me that strength isn't always about power or control. Sometimes it's about being willing to change, to adapt, to see beauty in uncertainty." As the Shadow Weaver disappeared into the darkness of space, Nova turned her attention to her tablet, where a message from Renlo awaited. "The journey you began here will have consequences that ripple through generations. You showed us that the future belongs not to those who seek to control it, but to those brave enough to help it evolve." She began typing a response, her words flowing as naturally as the new patterns in Vraxian society. The greatest discoveries happen when we're willing to question everything we think we know. Thank you for helping me discover that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about facing change with an open mind and heart. The legacy of her adventure would indeed echo through time, not as a story of conflict between species, but as a reminder that the most powerful force in the universe isn't technology, or strength, or even intelligence. It's the willingness to embrace transformation when the moment calls for it. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, aboard a transformed ship carrying a transformed species, that lesson continued to resonate through crystalline corridors that now danced with possibilities as endless as the stars themselves.